Jason Dalton's guilty pleas today provided a sense of relief for many, not just for his victims and their families, but also for the dozens of law enforcement officers who played a part in Dalton's capture and the investigation that followed. News Channel 3's George Rodas spoke with retired Kalamazoo County Undersheriff Paul Patyas today about the impact this case had on him.
Retired Undersheriff Paul Patyas says he was on his way back home with his wife after a night out when he got the call. People were dying. There were shootings all over town. That's when he responded to the Cracker Barrel in Texas Township, and he says that was the start of what he calls a wild night.
Lieutenant Dale Hins from State Police was there, and he came right up to me right away and he said, "This is all going to be related to the shooting at Seeley's and to your shooting earlier in Richland Township."
From there, Patyas says the search was on, and the more time passed, the more concerned he was other victims would surface.
And I remember we looked at each other and I said, "Dale, we've got to get this out to the public. We've got a guy going around just shooting people at random." But to have somebody just drive around randomly, gunning people down for no apparent reason, that just attacks the psyche of the community.
Patyas was in charge of informing the public. All the while, deputies, officers, and troopers came in from all over to search for Dalton.
What we didn't know is, with the light of dawn, was that going to bring us more dead bodies? And we were very, very concerned about that.
Patyas says it wasn't until after his day was done he realized the fear Jason Dalton had created.
And I didn't get back home for about 15 hours. And when I came in the door, my wife was crying. And I said, "Well, what's the matter? What?" And she said, "This is the first time in 42 years I've actually been afraid when you walked out the door." And that's when it hit me that I guess this was pretty serious.
Patyas said he's glad about Dalton's guilty pleas, and he's hoping the families and the victims can find some sense of closure.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you that don't know, my name is Jeff Getting. It's spelled Getting. I'm the Kalamazoo County Prosecuting Attorney. Thank you all for your patience, and thank you all for being here this afternoon. The reason that I asked you to come here today was because earlier this morning, Jason Dalton pled guilty to all of the charges that had been filed against him. He's pled guilty now to 6 counts of first-degree premeditated murder, 2 counts of assault with intent to commit murder, and 8 counts of felony firearm. The felony firearm charges are punishable by a mandatory 2-year term to be served consecutive to any other time imposed in the case. The 2 assault with intent to commit murder charges are punishable by up to life in prison or any number of years as determined by the judge. The 6 counts of first-degree premeditated murder are punishable by a mandatory sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. The case has now been scheduled for sentencing on February 5th. At that time, the victims will have an opportunity to address the court, or their families will have an opportunity to address the court regarding the impact this has had on them and what consequences they think the judge should impose. But as I said, he's facing mandatory terms of life in prison without the possibility of parole. I want to take a couple of minutes here just to say thank you to Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Jeff Williams, who's here with me. Jeff has been the lead attorney on this case from the beginning. He's done all the heavy lifting in the case. Without his assistance, we wouldn't be here today. Rhonda Baxter Todd and Stella Shavikas are victim advocates who are here. They've done an incredible job over the last nearly 3 years now working with the families. It's without them being there, these families would have had a much more difficult time as going through as with Jeff and I trying to deal with them. They provide services in this community that are really unmatched, unprecedented. Nowhere in the state of Michigan do I think anyone does better work than the Kalamazoo County Prosecutor's Office does with our victims. I also want to make sure that we thank some other people on the prosecution's team. Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Heather Bergman. She's an appellate specialist. She's the person who has handled all this case for the last 2.5 years as it went to the Court of Appeals, the Michigan Supreme Court, and back down to the Court of Appeals. Kathy Heibel, who's one of our technology expert, who assists Jeff and I in preparing all of the electronic and digital evidence for purposes of the trial. We couldn't do it without her. The police agencies involved in this case, the Kalamazoo County Sheriff, Richard Fuller, and the Sheriff's Department, especially Sergeant Jim Harrison, who was the person who actually caught Jason Dalton that night. They've done a phenomenal job in this case. The Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, Chief Carrie Ann Thomas, former Chief Jeff Hadley, their detectives, Bill Morey and Corey Garangelli especially, have done a lot of work in this case. And the Michigan State Police, who've just really stepped up and led this investigation. Detective First Lieutenant Chuck Christensen did a phenomenal job in this investigation. Outside of my office, there was a victim advocate, a specialist, Aaron Tonda, a former assistant prosecuting attorney actually with this office, who's made special arrangements for the victim and who has really done outstanding work. I want to make sure that I thank her as well. Personally, I'm going to take a moment to say thanks to my family. My wife, my kids put up a lot on a day-to-day basis for me in order to be able to do this job, even more so in the last few months as we've gotten ready for this case, and especially the last couple of weeks. It's not easy being the kid of the prosecutor, being the wife of the prosecutor, and they don't get enough thanks. So to them, thank you for letting me do this job. This morning, so what happened today? Thursday, Friday last week, we spent the morning working with Group A set of jurors. In the morning, Group B set of jurors in the afternoon, going through and establishing which jurors had potential hardships that would prevent them from sitting on a case of this length on Thursday. On Friday, we took those same Group A, same Group B jurors that were left that didn't have hardships, went through a questionnaire with them to establish any bias that they may have in this case that would prevent them from sitting. That allowed us to start with a group of well over 200 potential jurors in the case and be at a position today where we had approximately 100 people, 110 people that were coming back to be chosen as jurors. Before we started that voir dire process, we went on the record in the case. Assistant Prosecutor Williams put on the record that there had not ever been any plea negotiations in this case, that we had never made an offer. Sometimes there are issues in cases where there's a question of whether a defense counsel has communicated an offer to the client, to the defendant. We were never concerned about this, but we wanted to make sure that there was a record that we had never made an offer. We also wanted to give Mr. Dalton the opportunity to plead guilty if that's what he wanted to do. Assistant Prosecutor Williams put on the record that while we were not making any plea offers, we had not made any, we weren't going to, we would not object to Mr. Dalton pleading guilty. At that point, he expressed to the judge that that's what he wanted to do. That was about, there was then a conversation between him and his attorney that of course we weren't privy to. Shortly after 9:30 in the morning, his attorney indicated that against, as he put on the record later, against his advice, Mr. Dalton wanted to plead guilty to all of the charges that had been made against him. We scheduled that plea for 11 o'clock in the morning. That gave us an opportunity to contact all of our victims' families, let them know what was going on, because they didn't know anything about what was happening. They thought we were simply getting ready to pick a jury or starting to pick a jury this morning. That gave them the opportunity to be here present in court when Mr. Dalton pled guilty. You all saw that happen and have a record of that. It's unusual for a person to plead guilty to first-degree premeditated murder because the consequence is mandatory. It's life in prison without the possibility of parole. We don't typically see that happen. Jeff and I were talking about it, and we're aware of only a couple of instances ever in this community where a plea has been made to first-degree murder. But we're very happy that we were able to reach this resolution in the case. Doing this is what's best for the people of this community. It's what's best for our victims and their family. I need to say thank you to the victims' families in this case. They have been extraordinarily patient over the last nearly 3 years now with our office. This case has, as I said, gone up to the Michigan Court of Appeals, to the Michigan Supreme Court, back to the Michigan Court of Appeals. There's been a drawn-out legal process that these victims and their families have been very patient with us in allowing it to happen. For the survivors, you know, the Tiana Carruthers and Abigail Koff have been just extraordinary. Their families have been through an event that I can't even imagine what it must have been like. And there's another survivor in this that sometimes gets not necessarily overlooked but not mentioned. Alexis Cornish. She's Tyler Smith's girlfriend, and she was there when Tyler and his dad were killed. And she's never there was never charges brought, you know, with regard to her. But what this young woman went through that night, watching her boyfriend and his father get shot again and again and again, and cowering in the back seat of a car, wondering how many seconds you have left in your life, and then to be able to have this presence of mind to leave the car and get a phone out of Tyler's pocket and call 911 to report what had happened. It was just so extraordinarily brave. And I want to thank her for everything that she's been through, and her family for supporting her and us as we moved forward with this case as well. I don't know what else you might want to know that I can tell you. The case is scheduled for sentencing on February 5th. We want to make sure that we're still, that we keep in mind that we're not done until the defendant's been sentenced on this case. So I can't speak as freely as you might want me to about the facts of the case. Until we get him sentenced, Mr. Dalton sentenced, I want to make sure that we protect the case as much as we can.
So I suppose that would make the question why he did it off bounds.
I don't know whether there'll ever be a satisfactory answer as to why he did it. As we've gotten ready for this trial, we've focused on what we need to prove in a courtroom in order to establish his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt as to each of these charges. The why question is one that haunts us. You know, everybody wants to know. Mr. Dalton will have an opportunity at allocution at sentencing, as will the victims and their families. I don't know if he will ever say why.
Jeff, just how surprised are you by this decision?
Sort of. Sort of is the best answer. If I'm going to be honest, Jeff and I have talked about this case, and the possibility of this happening is something that we've talked about and wanted to leave an opportunity for this kind of resolution to take place, for him to plead guilty, and to give Mr. Dalton that opportunity to do it this morning. We didn't know that he was going to. I wouldn't have bet money on it for certain, but I wasn't shocked either that he said he was going to be pleading guilty.
Yeah, because I mean, he's had the opportunity to. You obviously didn't expect him to. It's so unusual for this charge, but now to do it the day as you guys are picking a jury, kind of 11th hour plea here.
Yeah, it's very much 11th hour, but you know, criminal cases work in a way where they sort of run hot and cold at times, right? Where we're in the courtroom and there's this opportunity today for him to tell the judge that he wants to plead guilty, and that opportunity isn't there every day for him because he's not in the courtroom every day. And so it's one of those things that we wanted to have him to have the opportunity to tell the judge if he wanted to plead guilty.
Did you have any inclination from maybe phone calls from jail or comments that he made in jail that he might be thinking about it?
I don't think that I can speak freely about that kind of information. We want to make sure that we protect the record at least until after sentencing in this case. But as with many cases like this, we do monitor the calls that defendants are making or receiving in the jail.
Do you think there'll be some looks at it by SATO, Court of Appeals, a close look at this one?
There's always going to be a look by, the Court of Appeals or the Michigan Supreme Court and defense attorneys. We made a very good record today that this was being done voluntarily, that no one had forced him into this, that there were no threats or promises that were made that were causing him to plead guilty. This was his choice, and that's clear on the record. That he chose to do it and accept the consequence of life in prison without parole is up to him. It's not, it's his right to a trial that was being given up, not mine, not his attorneys. And I think that we've made a very good record that'll withstand any second look.
Jeff, you've been working on this case for nearly 3 years now. How does it feel for it to come to an end like this? And is there any frustration that Dalton waited until the 11th hour while the victim's families painfully waited for justice?
In a perfect world, it would have been nice in order to be able to get this thing done or sooner rather than later. But the reality is that I'm relieved. I'm very happy that we were able to reach this resolution without there having to be a trial. This protects the case from appellate issues that could have been raised during the course of a trial proceeding. This is our best case outcome. Him pleading guilty to all of the charges without any form of plea agreement whatsoever. This is what's best for the case. This is certainly what's best for our victims, and I'm just relieved that we were able to accomplish that for them.
Is there any hesitation that the community at a trial learns a lot of the details, a lot of the information that they won't know about now?
That's not as important to me as making sure that there's a conviction to first-degree murder that's going to withstand any second look. This limits the issues that can be raised on appeal, and what's most important to me is certainly that's something that we think about, but that's not as important as justice for the victims and their families.
You've been working on this case for a while. Why do you think he pled guilty today?
His attorney placed on the record that he was doing it in order to avoid putting his family and the victims' families through the trial. I'll take him at his word.
Can you give us any update on the minor victim, Abigail?
I think that to the extent that we can protect her privacy and her family's privacy, we should do that. If they want to provide additional information, I think that they should be the ones that do that, not me.
Jeff, obviously you held firm saying you weren't going to offer a deal, and you didn't. What went into that? Maintaining that position, because who knows what might have happened if something was put on the table.
This crime was of such a magnitude, and it had an impact that went beyond where most crimes do. This impacted the community as a whole, in addition to our victims. In the scope of what happened, there was just no... I couldn't live with the idea of offering him anything in this case, and I didn't think that the community could either. And I certainly didn't think that the victims' families wanted there to be any kind of benefit to him. We were ready to go to trial. We have a good case. Jeff Williams, Assistant Prosecutor Williams, has been working hard on this. The police worked hard on their investigations. We have a case that's ready to be tried, and we're very confident that we are going to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt Mr. Dalton's guilt. This, you know, there's a point where you kind of selfishly, where you want the case to go to trial because of the amount of time, effort, preparation that went into it. But it's because of that time, effort, preparation that we're able to reach this resolution, and this is absolutely the best case scenario for everybody involved.
Mr. Getting, over the last 3 years, I know, speaking with the family, they talked a lot about emotionally. It's just been such a roller coaster. How did it feel for you guys this morning, finally making a phone call saying, okay, this is the latest and this is it?
For me, it was, you know, there's this weird combination of excited, nervous. We've got nearly an hour and a half between when we made the call and we put the plea on the record, and there's a fair amount of tension that you feel, stress that you feel during that wait, and all of that was going on. You know, I was very excited about him pleading guilty because what that would mean for the victims' families, not having to go through a trial, not having to listen to the evidence that we were going to present, hear the testimony, see the photographs, watch the videos. Not being in a position where they weren't going to have to go through that in order to get justice was a very good feeling.
How many witnesses are you going to call?
It would depend on how the trial played out. Probably somewhere more than 30, less than 50, just depending on how the case played out. We were, you know, if everything went as smoothly as possible, I think we were at somewhere around 32, 34 witnesses.
How many pieces of evidence did you expect?
We had 130 exhibits marked that we were prepared to introduce during the course of the trial.
You said selfishly you wanted this to go to trial. Is there any frustration in the amount of appeals, the amount of hearings, the amount of time it took to get here, and then it just ends and there's no chance to go through it?
No frustration at all. Because ultimately, this was about making sure that in the long run, that this case was done right and would withstand somebody's second look, second guess at how it happened. And the way this case played out was exactly the right way. Having the evidentiary issues decided on before the trial was going to happen, being prepared in a way that we were going to be able to move smoothly through our case in chief, answer any issues that were raised by the defense. And I'm not frustrated at all. I'm excited that we reached this resolution because the victims benefit from this. This is their best case outcome. It's our best case outcome.
Did you meet with witnesses and families after the plea this morning? And if so, what can you tell us anything about their reaction?
We met with them after the plea, before this, answered any questions that they have about this. I don't want to say something that's inappropriate because I think those conversations should remain private. They're happy with the outcome. They're grateful they're grateful that justice has been accomplished.
Jeff, can you say anything about the amount of work that went into preparing for this case versus like other cases you handled? Has this been a lot more work? Has it been to preparing for this, has this been one of the most, most prep needed for any case you've handled, or how does that kind of stack up? Can you give us any more info on that?
Jeff Williams, Assistant Prosecutor Williams, has done an incredible amount of work in this case. I've been involved in we were working together on preparing the case for trial. But Jeff's the one that should answer how much work this case has been from a preparation standpoint, not me.
It definitely was unprecedented, and it was definitely unprecedented as far as any case that I've handled. Obviously, unfortunately, murders happen in this community. We prepare for them, but it just kind of spidered out exponentially from there. We had at least 3 different scenes where crimes occurred. We had 2 other locations that were searched. We had multiple vehicles, multiple witnesses, multiple shell casings, multiple guns, and so every part of that just spidered out, and it was definitely a challenge connecting all those dots. But you know, the police officers did a great job of giving us a great investigation and things very organized and easy to work with. The Michigan State Police Crime Lab did a great job of putting that all together and connecting the dots between the gun found here and the shell casing found there. The people at the WMed Medical School, Joyce DeYoung and her team there, did a fantastic job of getting the autopsies done good and completely, and jumping through all the hoops and dotting every I and crossing every T as they always do. And yeah, it was a lot of work. There was a lot of information to take in and organize, but we had a great team of people to help do it, and it was something that I was fortunate to be able to do. I mean, I was in this community at the time. I know from the GPS information that Mr. Dalton drove under my window the night this was happening, and it was I was glad to be able to have this opportunity to do it from the office, and it was a lot of work, but it was very satisfying.
Was that a window like in this building, or was it?
I lived downtown at the time this happened, so
just drove by, like right by where you live. And
yep.
And how long have you been with the prosecutor's office? Just since you mentioned this is like.
Yeah, I've been with this office. It was 10 years this past summer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mandatory life without parole means he's like never ever coming out, right?
Michigan has laws that we commonly refer to as truth in sentencing. There are no good time disciplinary or other ways that he could receive time off this sentence. It means life in prison without the possibility of parole. A commutation by the governor, a pardon by the governor, those are the only ways that people don't actually serve life without the possibility of parole.
Jeff, some of the victims' families had said that they were looking forward to the opportunity to maybe see some remorse from Dalton at trial. Is that something that you guys have ever seen behind closed doors?
We don't have contact with Mr. Dalton behind closed doors. We have contact with him in the courtroom, most recently in chambers when we've talked with jurors, but we don't have contact with him outside of official court proceedings.
Have you seen it?
In court? No.
Do you think he is actually remorseful?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't have contact with him in that way to know whether or what he thinks. Anything else? One more time, let me say thank you to Stella Shavikas and Rhonda Baxter-Todd and Aaron Tonda and Heather Bergman and Jeff Williams and Kathy Heibel. They have done, there's no way to do this kind of a case by yourself. As Jeff said, there is a huge amount of information and preparation and teamwork that's necessary in order to make a case like this successful as this has been.
I'm Kirk Mason. Thanks for watching. Here's another video you can watch. Also, take a second to subscribe to our channel.